Greetings, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another Countermeasures game changer. Today I would like to take a look at Hitman 3, but before I do, I just wanted to clear up a bit of housekeeping. Obviously, I haven't been uploading quite so many videos recently. I've had a few messages from various viewers who have been questioning why, and I just wanted to let you know that I've been on a little bit of a short break recently. But I'm back now with an absolute stack load of reviews and thoughts on games and films coming up over the next coming weeks. So I'm looking forward to cracking through all of that. So yeah, back to business. This is Hitman 3. So it's the follow-up to the critically acclaimed Hitman 2, that was the follow-up to the critically acclaimed Hitman 1, which was the follow-up to all of the other Hitmen that there have been. I'm slightly losing track. Even though this is Hitman 3, I believe it might be something like Hitman 8 or 9 in the actual full sequence of all of these games. This game is a stealth game that was developed and published by IO Interactive. This came out for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and the soon-to-be dead and defunct Stadia. Unfortunately, RIP, that does not look like it's going to be around for much longer. And it also came out for the Nintendo Switch, which I don't think you could buy the game as such, but I believe that you could stream it to your Switch. So I think it basically is hitting all of these platforms full guns blazing. And you know, this franchise has been around for quite a long time. I can't even remember when the first one came out. I think it's got to be 15 if not 20 years old by now, if my memory serves correctly. Now before we get into this, because this game is it's pretty good. It's all coming out on all of the sort of most recent gen consoles, and your most up-to-date PC gaming rig can run this and make it look pretty sweet. I have to say that with the original Hitman came out years and years ago, and I wasn't really a big fan of it. Like, the story wasn't that great, but the idea of the mechanics behind it was always quite interesting. So that was the very, very first game. So the idea being that you're a hitman that goes into these different scenarios, and you have to take somebody out in different and interesting ways. Now, the very, very early games allowed you to do just that. You had like maybe 3 or 4 options of how you could take out a certain target. So, for example, you might have someone who's on a ranch in a desert in America, and they're surrounded by guards, and you can either go in all guns blazing, or you can sneak up and disguise yourself as one of the guards and then infiltrate certain sections of that base, and then eventually take out your target. And the idea being that you then try to sort of sneak away without getting caught, or you could just go all guns blazing and exit the mission. So your mission can either be 2 or 3 minutes long, depending if you go in with the hammer, or it can be 2 or 3 hours long if you wanted to really stretch it out and find out all the possibilities. Now, actually saying that the first one, maybe 3 hours, is probably pushing it a little bit. Certainly in these later games you can take your time, and the missions can take much longer. That earlier sort of Hitman games, maybe not quite so much as long as that. So the first problem that I've always had with these games is that I really have always disliked the protagonist of these games. So you are Agent 47, who is the generic bald guy with a barcode tattoo on the back of his head. Now, originally, I think when this came out, you were meant to be a kind of like slightly aging hitman, and you were hired to go and take out and assassinate all of these different people that were up to no good. So in that way, you're a kind of hitman with a heart. It's like you will murder everybody, but the person that you're chasing has obviously done something so terrible that they absolutely need you to go in and wipe them out. So that, for a start, I always had a bit of a problem with that, because I kind of I want my good guys to be the good guys and not be the kind of heartless killers. But then you don't get the fun, and you don't experience the kind of the thoughts you have to go through in order to work out the clever ways to kill your targets. So as each one of these games sort of progressed, as each one came out, the way to do that became much more expanded, if you like. You had a lot more options. So in the previous ones, you could shoot them, you could strangle them, you could could hit them with a hammer, or you could poison them. As those games went on, you could do more elaborate things like drop large chandeliers onto them at the right time. Like I said, you could poison their drinks and their food. So, the idea being that you enter these kind of sandbox areas, you maybe follow your target around for a little while, and then that target you start to see the pattern of what they're doing and where they're going, and that then just kind of goes on a loop, and that gives you then the opportunity to interrupt that pattern and take them out. So it is quite an interesting way of essentially having just like an assassination game unfold. The problem is that I just never really felt that invested in the game itself. I think the mechanics are quite fun, but the stories are always so weak. Like the earlier games, certainly it was all about the gimmick of the mechanics, and the story was always secondary. And because of that, as soon as it started becoming more popular, they tried to layer more of an interest into the story of who this guy is, where did he come from. He was trained up as a young boy, and along with a load of other agents, and they were all killed and he survived, and it's just not a very interesting story. And it's the reason why there have been several films that have come out. They've tried to relaunch this as a kind of successful franchise on several occasions in the Hollywood movie industry, and it's just fallen on its face because it's not that interesting, and the character is so one-dimensional. He doesn't really have much of an arc in any of these stories, so he's the same cold-blooded awesome killer at the start of mission 1 as he is at the end of mission 8. The stories are always really weak. There was a very lame plot where he was protecting a young girl for a while. They just weren't very good until Hitman Absolution came out, which was 4 games ago, and actually the story in that was really good. They started to develop the mechanics more so that you had more options to take people out, so it wasn't just the standard kind of garroting them with your fibre wire or anything like that. Like here, you can start to use different objects in the environment to distract people. So you could turn on the Hoover and distract this guy if you wanted to, or in other missions you could turn off a generator that's running, and that's powering a tent. That's a load of things in a tent that would then distract the guard to bring them out. That would allow you to take them out. And that game actually was quite good. The Absolution one was actually quite good. The story was quite good. But the problem is that what it became very obvious around that time is that people didn't really care about the story. So even though the writing was better on that one, people just wanted to play these sandbox scenarios where they could just to just do this part and not necessarily have it grounded in any kind of realistic story. So when Hitman 1 came out, which was the follow-up to Hitman Absolution, they just dispatched with any story of any that made any sense, that was any good, and they just went straight back to hide people in cabinet having strangled them. I guess once you get past the fact that the mechanics, while they have changed in terms of the things you can do, the idea behind them hasn't really developed since the very, very original first game all those years ago, which is that you just go through the motions of distracting people and taking them out, getting dressed up. Now, let's not even talk about the fact that all of these years have gone by and there's a bald assassin with a barcode on the back of his head taking out all these people, and he must be a living legend by now. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. He's the least conspicuous person you could ever see. I mean, there's no other bald people in this entire area, and that's the same for every section level of these games. And I just find it a little bit like, alright, maybe it doesn't need to be that realistic. Don't worry about it, Jay. I'm sure it's going to be fine if you just play through the mechanics. But I find them to be a little bit boring without purpose. The purpose is the same every time, which is just assassinate someone and leave. And I find that the sequences don't really change that much, even though they're incredibly well done. I mean, the animations behind, like taking this guy down, and all of those animations are done really well. Like the way that these are all designed and put together. They're done great. I mean, look, the detailing on old Agent 47's, he's got his paisley waistcoat on there. I mean, it looks great. I mean, this is all captured on a PS5, and yes, I think I had the 30 frames a second, but it had the ray tracing on, and I mean, when you're watching this on the 4K TV, it looks incredible, and that is something that the Hitman games have always done quite well. They've always pushed the technology enough to make them look good. But I just feel like the writing behind them is just boring. It doesn't, as soon as they tell me there's another Hitman game coming out, I just feel like it's more of the same. And I played all the way through Hitman 1, and I quite enjoyed it, in as much as the levels were quite challenging, took you to different locations. Like this one, you're in the tallest building in Dubai, and I'm sure that it's all very truthful to how the layout looks at the at certain sections. I'm sure that the team at IO went and actually photographed and looked at these areas to make sure they're as true as possible, because that's the kind of level of detail that some of these games do go to. But it's all for nothing for me if the story isn't there, and the story's just never there on these games. So like I said, it is single player. There is very little character development. You find yourself kind of walking into the AI quite a lot and bumping into these different areas. So if I'm dressed as a waiter and I try to walk into an area where it's only the security, they will stop and question you. But then I'll walk around the corner, assassinate someone, come back, I look exactly the same, but I'm just wearing a white jacket, and they will let me in that area. So there's a whole kind of, this is such a realistic simulator. And then you do things like that, and it's the least realistic thing you could ever possibly have happen in this scenario. Not to mention that when you do go through what's in your inventory, as you go around and slowly pick things up like hammers and screwdrivers and things like that, I mean, you'd be walking around with some pretty big pockets, because at this point in the game, I believe I may have picked up a pistol. Yeah, I might not have done, but there are, other than having the kind of arbitrary machine gun which you pick up at some point, which automatically clicks onto your back like a magnet, which is something that that has always bothered me in games. Having endless pockets also bothers me, because you're meant to be this super world-class hitman, sort of thinking on your feet, using what's available to you, and yet you have like 50 odd weapons in your pocket that you can use any one of them at any time. And I just feel that sort of detracts from the whole experience for me. So immediately I'm taken out of it. As the games develop, there are sections like this where you can listen in on people's conversations and learn more about how to take these people down, and that is something that's very good. And like I said, the mechanics have always been great in this game, and the technology that goes behind the building of these games, and how they're designed, how the architecture of all of these things are put together, the textures of everything is always great, the sound is always good. I mean, a few of the staff do have repeating conversations, of course, because if you're spending any length of time in any of these areas, there's only a certain amount of dialogue that they're going to be able to record, which again is something that I think, like, just have them say it once and then don't say it again. Don't have them keep saying it again, because it reminds you that you're in a computer game, and it's the thing that it's trying not to do. It's trying to make it like this realistic assassination experience when it doesn't really feel like that. So unfortunately, while this has had absolutely rave reviews across the board, I just feel like it's absolutely more of the same, and maybe I just dislike these kind of games. But I'm a massive Metal Gear Solid fan. I love some stealth, I love a little bit of realism, I love so all this stuff, the kind of getting dressed up as other characters and doing this, I think they've got all these really cool things at their fingertips, but it's constantly let down by the fact that the writing just isn't very good, and I don't particularly like the character. Maybe if you generated your own character, maybe if you had the chance at the start of each game, maybe if each game was completely different. At the start of one, you had the chance to, you were a certain, you could generate one character for that, and then the next one it was a different character, or you just generated one character in Hitman 1 and it carried through the series. Because I know that is a feature of Hitman 3, which is in the menus. If you've bought the other two games, then you have the option to go through and play all the missions in different sequences, which I think is quite good, bringing it, essentially using Hitman 3 as a hub for all of the games. But when the AI isn't that great, and when the stories feel pretty much the same each time, other than the locations are interesting. Once you get past the fact that you're in interesting locations, I don't feel like there's much more going on here. So unfortunately, I'm not a massive fan of this game, and I did play a fair amount of it, and it feels very much cut and paste like the previous games. So for that reason, I'm afraid that I am going to have to give this one a 4 out of 10, a mighty 4 from me. It's more of the same. I'm desperately waiting for this franchise to wake up and do something different. I just don't want a repeat of all of this in Hitman 4. It just feels like a wasted opportunity, and it obviously takes a lot of skilled artists, a lot of skilled designers, a lot of programmers and developers. They spend a lot of time making all this stuff work and interact well together. But if the foundation is broken, then building on top of that, it just is always going to be weak in my mind until they get that sorted out. So that's my opinion on that. So all that's left to say is be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Cheers.